before, a little chat and chew with Amy at the $500 level. That'd go a long way to the goal.
Yeah.
But however you want to do it, if you want to pick up on a gift to go to a show or get some KPFT swag, like I know one of my relatives is tuned in and is looking to get a KPFT hoodie out of the experience of supporting the radio station. You can do that too. But really, the best thing we can give you, we gave it to you the first time you found this radio station and realized it was different. It wasn't a commercial enterprise. It is commercial-free. It is listener-sponsored. It is independently produced by members of the community here in the greater Houston area who share their passion, whatever that might be, maybe the blues, maybe different form of news, maybe, who knows, all kinds of political expression, different philosophies. The show after this one every Monday evening, Vegan World Radio, followed by Queer Voices. I mean, there's just a little bit of the rainbow that is KPFT right there, from the blues to Open Journal to Vegan World Radio to Queer Voices and on into the night with the sounds of the Vinyl Avenger. So whatever you can do to help, we would appreciate hearing from you at 713-526-5738, 526-KPFT. We'll be joined by our guest, Egberto Willies. We're going to be talking politics with him. We're going to talk about his life as a professional blogger and activist and how that works and what he's doing about it. But that's in a few minutes. We, as always, like to talk about a few items in the news and share a couple of calendar items with you. We, of course, will be sharing our song of the week with you and close the program with a thought for the week to send you on your, we hope, merry way, along with some thanks for supporting us. So I think top of the list in terms of a hot take on the local scene is, of course, we mourn the loss of our dear friend Les Johnson, Mr. PT, who passed on Saturday morning. And, he's a unique representation of, I think, all that KPFT is about, because he is someone who's been around KPFT since the late 70s when he first started hanging out with the Crazy Cajun himself, Mr. Huey P. Moe. Huey Moe did the Crazy Cajun show here on KPFT on Friday nights. I've seen some film that was shot in this room back then when there was no wall. And there was no separation of guest and engineer and producer and all that. It was just, there's a guy behind a wall with some bar stools and ashtrays, and there's a rack of records on the wall and the whole nine yards. And so PT was hanging out here back then, and then when Huey P had to pass the torch of Cajun culture and the cultura acadiana, PT came into that space almost 40 years ago.
Wow.
And he would come down here every Saturday morning on his own dime, paid his own gas, got himself up in the middle of the night to haul himself and a box of music down here and share it with all of us and share his culture. And he did that because he loved the Acadian and Cajun culture, and and we loved PT. He and I didn't always agree on things politically, but so we just didn't talk about those things that much because we had a lot in common that we did talk about. It might be golf, it might be cheeseburgers, it might be great Cajun music, it might be gumbo, but I tell you, he was a character. If you ever went to PT's Cajun Barbecue House right there on Highway 3 off of the old Galveston Road at Ellington Field, ever went out there for one of the Zydeco dances on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon and did some of that waltzing and cha-cha Cajun style, that's something, that's a great memory that you get to carry with you for the rest of your life. I mean, he started out doing that. Because he loved that food and he loved sharing it with people. And, PT, man, I was shocked. I wasn't, but I was. Of course, you're always shocked when somebody passes unexpectedly. it feels like there's been a little bit too much of that in recent months. But I know that it's just the way of the world. That these things happen. I know that there will be services for PT, and KPFT will apprise you of those. There was an article in today's Houston Chronicle, which, while telling some of PT's story, I think it did him a disservice. And I'm not all super pleased with what this young reporter put into that article about PT, and besmirching the legacy of a really great little man. And so the story that we all know and love from waking up on Saturday mornings. I mean, I posted a picture of me and PT on Facebook Saturday afternoon, and I just said a couple sentences, and hundreds of people have checked that out, and dozens of people have said, how much that meant to him, or her, to wake up on Saturday morning and be able, and just know that you can tune in to 90.1 FM and you're going to hear this slice of life from the swamps of southwestern Louisiana, just on the other side of the Sabine River, that you're going to get nowhere else in the world. And again, he did it because he loved it, and we loved him. We miss him. We'll commemorate his life. We'll share that together. We will be playing a special song in his memory as the Song of the Week here on Open Journal. So we invite you to, bear with us and stay with us through the program today. That will be in the middle part of today's program here on Open Journal. So it's hard to really bring up a whole lot of interest in much of anything else in the wake of this loss,
Well, and it's really something when you talk about the value of KPFT and the fact that not only did he love it, but he wanted to share it. And we have this station where true stories of individuals that the Chronicle writer, meaning well or not, that we're not in the business of KPFT of selling clicks and creating controversy in stories just to sell papers or just to sell time, that you can listen to this station and know you're getting authentic storytelling, true stories about individuals to the best of one's capacity, that it doesn't have to be skewed, and that his music was for us.
Well, I have to presume that young Jasper, who wrote this article in the Chronicle, he's a recent graduate of J School, and so I know he is fairly new to Houston. I haven't seen his byline in a lot of things in the Chronicle. I'm a little bit more upset with whoever was the copy editor who saw this and said, well, yeah, we want to put this in here and sort of besmirch his memory, rather than maybe celebrate a life well lived and celebrate a man who did a lot of great things for people, and is going to go down in our memories as this, one of a kind human being. I wanted to share, if I could, and I know we're already 11 minutes in, and we haven't really done a lot of fundraising, and we still have Egberto Willies, who's going to be our special guest for the entire program today. I got an email from a good friend, Nick Gaitan. Nick is... Man, he is the bass player of bass players, local band, touring national, international band. If you want a hired gun, great bass player, Nick Gaitan, and the Umbrella Man. He's great. Anyway, he sent me this email, and it says this about PT: there's nothing like the way home from endless nights in San Antonio, Austin, Waco, Corpus, or Southwest Louisiana, and you're on that last stretch of road between you and your own bed. You're beat, you're satisfied, you're delirious. I've driven these roads completely alone and in the good company of some of the cats I play music with. It's a lovely and familiar feeling that comes upon you. You can't quite see the skyline of old Houston town, but You know it won't be long because you are finally hearing the sweet sounds of the Cajun box and fiddle as the music dances its way right into your heart through that staticky signal that says you're almost home. The voice of the DJ is just as happy as the music he plays, and as you fight to keep your eyes open and you worked your way around downtown in its infinite glow, you are finally back in the hood, and all is well. Just before you pull into the driveway, there's always one more song that just started, and you just sit there and let it play till the end. You don't roll that key back until it's done. That's how music touches the heart. That's for all the early morning sounds that made the soundtrack of the road home many, many times. Rest in peace, sir. I couldn't say anything better than what my buddy Nick Gaitan wrote me, so I'm sharing that with you. And that's the way it is.
Yeah, yes.
So we will keep you posted as we learn more about our dear friend PT, and yeah.
Yeah, no, but we definitely want to enjoy these moments as we have on this radio, this time that we have together, the time that we have with you, our listeners. It does not seem that we do pledge drives just to do them, but these moments for us as those who produce content, as Egberto will speak of, it is not just because, it is because we love the conversation. We want to be a part of your lives. We want to add value because you add great value to ours. And these are volunteer hours because it is out of that kind of care. Mm-hmm. And so we don't ask just because we don't ask because we want for us. We really ask because we want to be able to do better for you. So hopefully as we are looking for our seemingly small in some ways and maybe a lot to others donation request for $650, just know, as Dwayne has discussed with PT, that it is a labor of love and it is a commitment to Houston and it is a commitment to you, our listeners. So, yeah.
Well, and okay, so I sort of bogarted our hot takes and topical trending things because of sort of the overwhelming nature of losing a dear friend. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are tons of other things to talk about. Maybe when we bring in Egberto, we will get into some of these others that were on our list, like what's going on at TSU, this young rapper that was gunned down up in Acres Home, this new potential hair discrimination bill that's coming out and isn't going to probably get put into law for a couple of years, I'm sure. But and that's just on the local front. And then, I mean, nationally, golly, we haven't Iowa. We could spend the hour talking about it. Presidential retaliation. I know we're going to talk about it. The New Hampshire primaries coming, and we can talk about that, let alone Academy Awards, coronavirus. The list is on and on and on. So there's so many things. And we'll touch on some of those with our guests here in just a couple of minutes now, okay? So bear with us. We're 16 into the 6. You're tuned to the Mighty 90. The phone number is 713-526-5738 or 526-KPFT. We got a couple of calendar items. Do you want to share?
Yeah. Okay, we'll sort of run through some of these because this is wonderful. Because I think what happens in Houston and what we remember about our calendar items is that there's a lot of living to be done in Houston. There are a lot of people doing great work. And hopefully this is just a few things that you can consider attending, supporting, sharing. And the first begins Tuesday, February 11th from 7 to 9 p.m. The Center for the Healing of Racism celebrates Black History Month with a screening of the documentary Traces of the Trade, a story from the Deep North. This film will be followed by a dialogue and conversation. More information can be found on their website, and you can RSVP centerhealingracism.org, which is located at 3412 Crawford Street. Right after that, we have February 12th. So once you do Tuesday, you can wake up Wednesday and keep going to Kevin Russell of Shiny Ribs, who's bringing his solo show.
And he's performed KPFT's birthday parties in past years. I mean, Shiny Ribs is a hot band. Kevin Russell is Shiny Ribs, but I mean, when he brings his whole band, it's something extraordinary. But if it's just him, it's crazy good.
Oh, well, then.
And he's going to be at Under the Volcano, which is Clint Broussard's, that's one of the places I think he's got his name tattooed in one of the stools there. Yeah. I know Ronnie does.
Well, it's worth checking it out. underthevolcanohouston.com. And then as you take a break on Thursday, then come back on Friday, February 14th from 9:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. The Big Easy Social and Pleasure Club presents Trudy Lynn's Valentine Ball. It's a tiny cover. It's worth it all. TheBigEasyBlues.com, which is located at 5731 Kirby Drive. It's a great spot.
I look for the Firestone store because it's because Big Easy is such a little dive.
It is
it's like this little box next to the big tire store. So that's how I've always found it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's
okay, so we're 18 in. It is KPFT. You're tuned to Pacifica Radio. Hey, we need to check out with Maverick and see what's shaking out at the pledge line. Maverick.
Hey. We're out here. And,
yes, sir.
And we're just hanging out here. We do want to thank Melissa, who was one of the last people to donate to Blues and Hi-Fi at the end of that show.
I'm reading between the lines there, Maverick, to make it plain if that's what you're doing. And we thank you, Melissa. But that means that there's been no one since Melissa. You don't have to have a code book to know this, right?
Unfortunately, that is how we are.
Okay.
We are a third of the way into the show. And we need your help. 713-526 KPFT is the phone number to call.
So if you were going to invest in KPFT, Maverick, and I think you probably have because you're wearing a KPFT T-shirt.
That's right.
Oftentimes.
That's right.
What would you recommend someone? Maybe they're kind of new to this thing. Maybe they don't quite understand that commercial-free, listener-sponsored means that the listeners are the sponsors. There are no commercial sponsors. There is no corporate god or goddess pulling the levers of power at KPFT. There is no church or school behind KPFT, though we are the Church of the Blues all day Sunday. We are the University of the Mind all the time here at KPFT. We are the theater of the airwaves. And all of that is very true. But as compared to any other public radio station, anywhere down here on the low end of the FM dial where the FCC's, keeping all of us non-commercial educational outlets, we know that they're either college, university, or religious group. Okay, so it's either a church or a school.
We just got a pledge come in, and we want to thank Gina.
Gina. Right on, Gina. Okay, so
started.
We don't have churches and schools, though we are a church and a school, unofficially speaking. But we don't have them behind us like the U of H or the Rice or the Prairie View or the TSU or the Alvin Community College or any of the evangelical Christian groups that get radio stations, non-commercial, that they get to use. Everything else happens here. The things that people can't do at a university station or at an evangelical Christian radio station.
To answer your question, I would say I definitely would tell people to think about all the different unique programmings and to really think about the time commitment. It is not necessarily just to do the show, but to put together the show.
Yeah.
And not only that, to think that you can support the station, but also go to a concert as well.
Yeah, we line up guests well in advance. I think I talked to Egberto about doing this maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. We planned this out. We script it, though it's not scripted like a play. We have a framework. We've described it to you, dear friends. I mean, we come in, I kind of rant a little bit, it seems to be, and we have a little conversation about things in the news. We share a couple of hot tips on, things that might not already be on your calendar that we think might be cool for you to consider. We have a substantive conversation with a guest that we think would be worthy of you to get to know maybe a little bit better. We share a song of the week that's a Houston song. We end up with a thought of the week to send you away inspired, we hope, to do good. And that's the structure of the show.
And on top of that, we have a podcast, too.
That's right.
Yeah.
Podcasts take time as well.
We're evolving, and that is work. Yes. Now, but we definitely can't do it without you, and we do it for you. So all of those vehicles. And look at that diversity of programming. That is a lot of different shows and content.
You know,
that
and there's
KPFT
not
allows.
just FM. There's an HD too.
That's right.
With tons of HD programming.
Yep.
Well, it's a multiplicity of good things, good reasons, and that phone number is
713-526-KPFT.
526-5738. Visa, Discover, American Express, MasterCard, cash, check, money order, electronic funds transfer, credit, debit, you name it. Make the call. The folks will do it all from there. So let us know that you're there, that you care, that you've got something to spare, you're willing to share. Keep us on the air. It's only fair.
Yes, indeed. There you have it. There's
Come on.
the spiel itself. We can also go online to kpft.org, select Open Journal there that way.
Okay. All right, Maverick, we're going to check back in, and hopefully Melissa and others will be in the thank you queue.
That's right.
All right, thank you
That's the
much.
hope.
All right. You are tuned to Open Journal on Pacifica Radio, KPFT in Houston. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting it. I'm Dwayne Bradley.
And I'm Stephanie Coleman. Egberto Willies is a political activist, author, political blogger, radio show host, business owner, software developer, web designer, and mechanical engineer.
And Dad.
And Dad. How wonderful. He's an ardent liberal that believes tolerance is essential. His favorite phrase is political involvement should be a requirement for citizenship. Egberto's weekly program, Politics Done Right, airs at 3 p.m. on Tuesdays. Egberto Willies, welcome back to KPFT's Open Journal.
Thank you so kindly for having me once again. I mean, I enjoy being with you, Stephanie and Dwayne. It's always great to be here.
It's great to have you on,
is.
Egberto, and thank you for coming in and in a certain sense doing double duty by being here with us, as well as, you know, you've got work to do in producing your own important program here at KPFT. So tell us a little bit, if you could, about your background and what it is that brought you to this beautiful place that we all call home now here in Houston, Texas. I'm not a native. You're not a native. Stephanie
I'm a nomadic
actually
native.
is a native, one of those rare breed of Houston natives, but
That's
I
right.
know that you and I are not. I'm a New Jersey boy, transplant, but I've been here so long that I can say y'all now and feel comfortable.
I can say y'all too, and I am actually the real Southerner. I'm from way, way south. I'm from Panama, Central America, and school brought me here. So I came here to go to college, and as what happened to a whole lot of people when they come to the United States of America, a lot of us stay. Because, you know, it's a land of opportunity and all that wonderful stuff. And you know what? When I came here in 1979, it was the land of opportunity. And as soon as 1980 come, unbeknownst to me, that was when the slide began for it slowly not being the land of opportunity that it was intended to be, that most of us who came from afar were actually looking for.
So what if you were to describe that year and that switch?
That is when, but you know, I have to confess, I didn't know what was happening then, but that is when Reagan got elected. But I was too green to understand exactly what was going on in the country until later on to realize that was when the entire American dynamic changed, and so very few people realized it as it was happening.
It's sort of too close to the transition.
Yes,
It's definitely.
yes.
Well, you know, as you look back and you say that you've been to Houston, even through this transition, you saw things happen as you matured, and you seem to take a very active role in taking a voice to say something about that. And with your show, Politics Done Right, you really use that platform to have these conversations. So if you could tell us, how long have you been hosting this show, and introduce our listeners to it?
Well, I came to KPFT actually after giving a proposal to Ernesto, and actually Dr. Bradley here, and Ernesto approved that show. So, you know, I've always had a kind place in my heart for that, because, you know, I was sort of a newcomer to terrestrial radio, but I was already doing Politics Done Right for several years prior. But bringing it to the state, I've always been a KPFT lover. You know, this has always been like the station that had progressive values, and I've always wanted to be, I've always been a donor, but I wanted to be a part of it, and got the opportunity, was advised to come and try, and then it gave that one other door to present to present the things that we needed to present as a progressive outlet. So I used the opportunity. First of all, and I like to make everybody know this, to be on air at a station with 100,000 watts is an honor. So I think you have to treat it that way, and that is one of the things that I always promise, that if given these kinds of opportunities, you have to make good use of it. The airwaves belong to the people, and what we preach on air, look, we better be the right thing for the people.
So you have a lot of people who call in,
Yes,
and that is a very unique math to sort of manage. How do you manage? It's easy to deal with those who agree,
right.
but how do you have those kind of conversations with people who don't agree with you?
Believe it or not, I prefer talking to people that I disagree with. I mean, I got some wisdom from a guy one time that said, if you know how to listen, and by the way, I wasn't always the type of person who knew how to listen. I learned that over time. But if you knew how to listen, you could get a whole lot of it. I joined an organization called the Coffee Party USA. And one of the things that organization taught me was the ability to, people don't have to sit down and agree with you. I don't have to agree with you to like you. I mean, the interesting thing about it is a lot of times you sit down and you're in a coffee shop and you're drinking coffee and you have a conversation about your kids, or you have a conversation about something, and you ain't got a clue what that person's political philosophy is, social philosophy, religious philosophy, but you like the person. And then suddenly you find out, dang, that guy is a evangelical right-wing. And it turns out then that if that is the case, and you could have that conversation that had nothing to do with other stuff, people are really, I have this concept that I say, most people are good. I mean, everybody, most people are good. It is what the system puts inside of folk to create this dynamic of dissension among people. And one of the things that I promised I was going to do, given this platform, is I was going to tell folks, let's not allow a system that depends on us to be at each other's throat to actually do things like vote against our own interests and give the power to the few who know how to keep me fighting against Dwayne fighting against you, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that sort of manipulation, the divide and conquer there.
Yes.
So you're mentioning the coffee party as kind of an entree that in some ways was what brought you to KPFT. And how does that activism impact what you do on a day-to-day basis now? Because you've been engaged not just with blogging,
right,
and doing an online internet version of Politics Done Right, but you've been involved with Netroot Nation and so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, interestingly, anybody who knew me back in Panama in high school, they knew that I was a loud mouth, big mouth, all that kind of stuff, never took anything. And when I went to the University of Texas, I was also marching with the South African Liberation Action Committee with boots and berets and all that kind of stuff. So, the activism was always there. When you work for corporate America for a while, though, you kind of have to play it.
Rein it in.
And then when you establish your own software business or something, you have to kind of blog under a pseudonym. So I've been blogging under pseudonyms and all of that for a while. Now, I can say that what really changed was, I think, I'll be frank, having a kid and some day of the week sitting down in the dark and realize what comes after. And realize what that looks like. I sit down and wonder sometimes, don't folks really understand what's happening, where things are going? So, I mean, day to day, that is when I get up in the mornings, day to day, those are the kinds of, I'm kind of a weirdo, but those are the kinds of things that I think of.
Weirdo in which sense of that word?
Well, maybe I am a nerd. I think I can admit that.
Okay.
You're working on it.
Yeah. I get up when I was writing software, I would dream
in code.
Okay. Now I dream in politics, so yeah, I will consider myself a a nerd, but then but every time I do that, my daughter reminds me of something. Dad, but you know, Revenge of the Nerd proved that nerds could be cool.
That's great. No, but it's definitely, you have a very eclectic capacity, which gives you a very unique perspective from the sort of liberal conversation in terms of capacity to the technical
Right.
conversation to being able to use video and streaming, really bringing all of those pieces in to tell the story.
You know what is interesting? I always tell people this. I love the University of Texas. I always say things like engineering is like a great field, right? Because you learn how to kind of, whenever you get into something, you want to know how it works. So when I got into, like you do a lot of graphic design, right?
Yes.
When I had to do my stuff, I had to go into that. I notice how I was admiring your new book.
Yes.
It's because for me, it was like, oh, wow, I wonder how she did that. I wonder how she did that one. That is, so engineering gives you that kind of perspective that you want. Everything you see, you look at it from that standpoint. So I sit down there and I talk to Dwayne and I see how Dwayne tick, and I'm like, okay, let me see how,
Understand
it's
that
just
more.
that kind of a thing, yeah.
So when you talk about trying to understand, and you come to the States from Panama, and then you really delve into American politics.
Yes.
And you understand it in
Yes.
very nuanced and complicated ways, and can really have complicated conversations about it.
Yes.
What really sort of got you into American politics and really said, this is a topic that I want to have these conversations about?
When you see things not working, when you sit down there and, first of all, when you listen to politicians make absolutely no sense and people worship them, when you see politicians hurt people, it makes a difference. When you see people, when people do things that doesn't conform to math, it's like, my big pet peeve is Medicare for all. It's like, for me, it's so obvious, I mean, if you have externalities that causes things to increase in price, the simpler method is easier. It's like simple. And when you have people whose job it is to completely change people's perception of reality, a reality that hurts them, it's almost impossible for guys like me not to engage. It's like you just can't let that stand. So that is one of the reasons that doing this. The only problem with it, it's not. After you've done your own business, you're a business owner as well, and you try to do this sort of stuff full time. It is difficult because it doesn't pay. And folks, that's why you should call 713-526-5738 and make sure that Open Journal is funded so that we can stay on here.
That's right. I mean, that is the part. I mean, you really are. I mean, there's sort of two parts. The amount of work it takes to find,
Yes.
keep, vet the stories,
Yes.
make sure that you're giving the listeners the most accurate, sort of non-biased conversation. It's easy to take what's out there and sort of regurgitate it, but
Right.
to really do that research, that's a full-time commitment. And to, even if you volunteer your time in it, the physical space of keeping the lights on, keeping the audio sort of working, does take the
But
donations.
Stephanie, you also have to eat.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. At least a little juice. A little fasting or something. But it is a complicated balance.
It is, because when the passion doesn't always turn into a realization of your personal economy. And, so, I mean, personally, I've been trying to create that fusion for the last 8 years. I haven't knocked on the perfect scenario yet.
Yeah.
But the right side of the aisle, are funded by a corporatocracy that has unlimited funds. We are doing things ad hoc, trying to survive as a radio station, trying to survive. And for those of us who do activism on a full-time basis, trying to survive personally.
Yeah.
It is not easy, but you know what? It is rewarding.
Yeah. So now, as you look at this evolution of technology, from blogging to streaming to radio, which is sort of switching over to podcasts, in some ways they're similar. It's just sort of a different sort of way of receiving it. Do you see some of those platforms being easier to monetize, or is there sort of new math that comes out of this fusion?
Well, the new thing is that, first of all, the monetization for what you're doing is going to require all sides. You have to do podcasts, you have to do vlogcasts, you got to do just about everything. The issue, however, is again the corporate structure, because can I tell a 1 minute story? A 1 minute story. When I dropped my software company to do activism full time, it wasn't just a blind idea. It was that I could do a program for free, have a website that had a ton of traffic that could bring, based on my outside traffic, bring some income, not what I made before, but enough to survive. And then one day, Facebook said, we are going to change the algorithm, and YouTube said it as well. And in one day, I lost 90% of my income from my website. That is when a corporate structure, even as you think you have freedom. And when we rage against the corporate structure, those are the kinds of things that we have to look at, where they are the masters of everything. It's what I call it's a new slavery. And I had an interview with Dr. Richard Wolff, and I looked at Richard Wolff and I said, this is my theory. I think our current economic system is nothing more than antiseptic slavery. And, I am sitting down there talking to Dr. Wolff and saying, I wonder if this guy's going to call me a kook for saying that. And he said, no,
Absolutely.
You're right.
Yeah.
That was confirming, and,
So Richard Wolff is an avowed Marxist.
Yes.
And so he can be dismissed by the powers that are,
Right.
just with the brush of the hand, as I just did, just by saying that.
Right.
And so the besmirching of him in one word can throw any value that he may truly have and a great base of knowledge to share, it can be dismissed out of hand. So I want to ask you, Egberto Willies, when we look at the conflation of someone who is talking about socialism being equated with communism, and then stoking some kind of almost like a genetic fear, going back to Leave It to Beaver days of air raid shelters and the Cold War and Russia, America, the Battle of the Titans kind of thing. How do you have that discussion with someone and break through that too easy to set oneself in the mind of saying, oh, well, she's a communist, he's a socialist, they can't do effectively in America, they're going to ruin the country?
I made the concerted effort to use the word socialism a lot less. And that is because you know what you just said about they can dismiss Richard Wolff as a Marxist, and once you say Marxist, nobody is listening. What I find by using the platforms, the internet platform, I bring a lot of folks in with the message, and people are there saying, oh yeah, wow, you mean, yeah, why is it that the plutocrat makes all the money and I do the work? Why is it that the guy who just trades in stock is so much more worthy than a guy who invents something? Why is it? And what happens then is when I tell them that, they ask those questions, guess what happens? They start to say, oh, I never thought about it that way. And then by not using the word socialism, you get them to think about it. Now, every so often, because I have a particular proclivity for a particular candidate, they would automatically assume that.
That puts you in a box.
That puts me in a box. And what I try to do is I leverage that by using the complement candidate that I also support as a backdrop. So, I mean, it kind of helps in making the message a bit wider. But we all need to get this stuff going. 713-526-5738. Folks, come on. You got to bring this show to the top.
Yeah, it's always great to have
you. So
you.
we are going to continue this conversation, Egberto, but I do want to check in with Maverick and Susan and Rick out on the other side of this glass cube that we are secured in to see if there's any activity.
There is some activity, which is a good thing.
Yes.
Hey,
We want to thank Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous for renewing their pledge. They're going to get a KPFT keychain.
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you, Anonymous.
All right, so the
That's
Anonymi are supporting KPFT. That's a big
Hey,
family.
we also want to thank Jerome and Donna.
Oh, excellent.
Jerome.
They want to thank Stephanie, Dwayne, and all others in memory of PT.
Jerome. Oh man. Hey, if
Yeah.
do you have access to the screen with that pledge? Does it
Yes.
show that he's calling in long distance? Maybe
He is.
all the way
That's
from
right.
the island of Rhodes.
Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Jerome, I know that you and PT and you and Donna and PT go way back, and I'm sorry for, all of our loss. It doesn't mean that PT still wouldn't want you to send us some of those giant crawfish that you guys have.
There
up
you have
there.
it. And you know what? It is February.
So thank you for being there, and thank you for tuning in, and thank you for caring enough about your friend and mine, Mr. PT.
I was
Les Johnson.
talking to some people out here in Pledge Central. I never saw PT without a smile on his face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was always so cheerful, so joyful. And in this world, that's
Well,
pretty
I've seen
rare.
PT
It's
a whole
become
lot
rare.
more than you, and I could tell you some stories, but that's a different time and a different place. But you're pretty much right on there, and yeah.
Hey,
so,
we also want to thank Philip and Evelyn for a very generous donation, also in honor of PT.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Phil.
much.
Thank you, Evelyn. Yeah, and I want to thank Nick Gaitan also for writing what he did, which I could not have put it any better than the way he did. I mean, imagine you're like a musician working on the road. You're like a contractor, no corporate entity that's covering your health insurance. You're like your own thing, like many of us
Yes.
are.
Yes.
And so he's driving home, coming in from out of town, knowing that on Saturday morning at dawn he's going to get a great hit of music on KPFT because PT is always there. So knowing and hoping that this program will continue, it's an important part of the culture of Southeast Texas and Southwest Louisiana. It's one of the fibers that are woven into that sound tapestry that is KPFT. And I know, having spoken to the interim general manager, there's an intention to maintain that with Cajun and Zydeco and Acadian music and culture. So that's a good thing. We'll see how that manifests in a practical way.
And the thing is, where else are you going to hear Zydeco and Cajun music? On the FM dial in Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, and I want to check, there's a lot of different tickets for a lot of different shows at a lot of different venues. I just want to accentuate one because we're visiting with Egberto Willies. We're talking politics done right. He's been coming in the early morning hours, and he's been working with Miss Amy Goodman out of Democracy Now!, world headquarters up in Manhattan. She's coming to Houston to celebrate KPFT's 50th anniversary and having a little birthday get-together. That's going to be over at St. Andrew's Church. I think it's on March the 21st. I don't have any of the details in here in the booth, but I think it's $90 for a pair of seats.
So it is $90 for a pair, and if you want to go by yourself, it's $50.
And it's $500 if you want to
$500
go
for
for
a
a
meet and
pair to have the meet and greet, chat and chew, hugging with the Amy in front row seats.
Right on, yes.
Okay, and where is this church, and what's the date again?
The date is Saturday, March 21st, and it's at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. Hey, thanks for that ring. We still
Okay.
got 15 more minutes, and we can definitely thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, we're going to
absolutely.
continue the conversation with Egberto Willies here in just a minute. We're going to check back in with you before the hour is up, Maverick. But, we promised that we're going to play our Song of the Week. It's about 15 minutes overdue, but I'll take the hit on that. And every week we feature a Song of the Week in honor of our good friend PT. This week we want to feature something from an album called The Cajun Gentleman's Greatest Hits. A good friend of PT's named Cammy Doucette. And the liner sleeve for this album, which was recorded back in 2000 is when this came out, says on the inside, "Thank you, Les P.T. Johnson, for making this CD possible. When you folks go to Houston, be sure to visit PT's on the old Galveston Road." Well, PT is not on the old Galveston Road, but he'll always be on the old Galveston Road in a certain sense. And so we want to send this out to him, his family, in his memory. It's from Cammy Doucette, It's All Over is the Open Journal Song of the Week.
C'était dessus un samedi après-midi. J'ai entendu la chanson qui s'appelle C'est tout fini. L'homme chantait de son cœur comme s'il était cassé. Je m'ai allé sur le bord du chemin et je m'ai mis à pleurer. Les mots de la chanson a resté dessus mon cœur. Ça m'a fait penser de ma famille que j'ai perdue. Je connais un jour à venir, on va tous se rencontrer. Et des belles, belles chansons, on va tout le temps chanter. C'est tout fini.
Welcome back. That was It's All Over by Cami Dussault, Open Journal Song of the Week, a tribute to PT. If you want to suggest a song or artist, drop us a tip on social media or using Open Journal at kpft.org. Always looking to celebrate that which is Houston, impacted by Houston, transformed through Houston. Any new sounds or old sounds that you think as listeners you would like to hear, and more importantly, that you would like to share. We are top of the last 9 minutes of our segment here, having a conversation with Egberto Willies, and wanting to know, you have done quite a bit since you've been on KPFT and just in general. Is there any hope? Do you believe that politics can be done right?
Yes, I'm a permanent optimist.
Oh, that's good.
I am always optimistic, and I believe that people will change. I mean, and you know, if you take a look at society in general, it always moves forward. You get a few steps backwards, but it moves forward. America is not the America that it was before either one of us were here. And it has changed. A lot of things has gotten a lot better. Some things have gotten we've slid back on a few things, but we are making progress.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of folks are really upset, let's say, with the president that we have now, et cetera, et cetera. But I think having this president was an important catharsis for this country, because we needed to understand that a lot of what we were doing was still sort of a facade, a scab on a sore that was still there. And all he did was allow a lot of people who thought things were different to be able to see themselves that no, things are not completely the way they need to be.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting when you say, however he does it, be it a tweet or a comment, and then the behaviors that people have, and they say, well, it's because of him. It's like, well, I mean, you acted on something. So really sort of being self-reflective and say there was something in you that acted on, whether he meant what he said or not. It's those that are acting on it that need to sort of reset.
I agree with you 100%. And I don't even look at the people's carnal reaction to let's say to not like them or to hate on them, because a lot of who we are is the environment that we grew up in.
Yes.
And if you can look at everybody and say you are that way because of your environment, the question is, are you willing to change what your environment had done to you? And so I think Donald Trump goes ahead and brings out a lot of bad things that people have within them.
Yeah.
Now that they have that exposed, are you willing to make the change that you know you need to make?
So when we talk about change in this upcoming election, do you think when we talk about policies and politics and party, has there been enough of a reflection from opening this wound that do you think the Democratic Party has a chance? Are they in their own way? Are they getting out of their way?
No, the Democratic Party, in my humble opinion, is in the way. But what I'm very happy for is all the progressive activists that I see moving around, not only Harris County, but everywhere that I go. I was in Philadelphia for a Netroots conference. I was in D.C. for a Bridge Alliance conference. And I see the young people of all stripes. They are saying, to hell with these parties. We know what we need to get done. I met a young woman. Her name was Brielle. And I interviewed her, and she said, we need to make activism, not sexy, she used another word, but she said, and that's where we are now, making activism sort of a form of life. That's something that you want to do, and that's where a lot of the younger folks are. And the older folk, well, they're dying out anyway.
Yeah. And the interesting part, though, the younger, they're living a whole world off the grid.
Yes.
It's pseudo names on social media. They're making movements that people don't know, that people don't see. And ideally, the notion that a country this size and at this stage of evolution would have evolved to just a two-party system,
it's crazy.
Seems a little bizarre. So, there is something to be said about this digital platform, and you have a digital platform, which we didn't talk a lot about, but EgbertoWillies.com. What can people find on your website, and why should they come and check it out? Because I think they should.
Let me tell you what I first of all, I cut videos, I look at videos, I do videos of what's going on in the country. I also give what I would hope is an educated opinion, an informed opinion on things that I find that the mainstream media forgets to put out or deliberately leaves out because of who their corporate masters are. So you come to my website, you get a whole lot of blogs, a whole lot of interpretation of the videos that you see on TV.
So not only do you have this, but you're an author as well, and we just want to make sure that people can find all of this information for your contact. If you could let them know and remind them how they can reach out to you and stay connected with you even after Open Journal, that would be wonderful.
Please visit EgbertoWillies.com, EgbertoWillies.com, and politicsdoneright.com. All the information to both my book, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, can be found there and everywhere else.
This is wonderful. So as we begin to look at our hours, and you have a optimistic view of the country's future and where we're heading?
Yes, I'm very optimistic that we as a country are going to do just fine. We have a few things that we have to work through, but we need to have people that are ready to uplift other people.
Egberto, I'm uplifted just having you here and hearing what you've got to share. I appreciate it. Keep up
Thank
the
you
great
so
work.
kindly for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dear friends, that's about it for this edition of the Open Journal on this winter. And we want to thank you for joining us on Open Journal. I'm Dwayne Bradley. Check the website for an archive of the program. Subscribe to our podcast, KPFT-OJ. We're always appreciative of your feedback and suggestions.
Yes, and if you were so engaged in the station's conversation that you could not call while we were speaking, feel comfortable to do that online after the show is over, sometime during the vegan segment or after that. That is kpft.org, because I'm Stephanie Coleman, and we are dedicated, all volunteer production staff, including our producers Rambling Rick Campbell and Susan Phillips, along with tech support and social media insights with Maverick, and our supporters, you. Thanks for donating. Thanks for sharing. Open Journal theme music provided by Kevin MacLeod. Be here with us for Open Journal next time for more great conversations and information.
Okay, and as always, we like to leave you with a thought for the week. I promised that, and it comes to us from Maya Angelou, who said, "If you are always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be." Take care of each other, and I want to send this out to thank you. It's a little bit of the last words from PT from his last show on the air at KPFT. Laissez la bon temps rouler, lâche pas la patate.
All right. Thank you, Pete, for coming in this morning.